Hello and welcome back to History at Midnight. As you settle in and allow your surroundings to grow quiet, you begin to notice a subtle shift in your awareness. The present moment slowly loosens its hold, and something older begins to take its place. Not suddenly, but gradually, like the tide pulling away from the shore and revealing a different world beneath your feet. When you think of pirates, perhaps what comes to mind at first is something vivid and dramatic. A figure standing against the wind, a flash of steel, a chest of gold buried somewhere far away. But as you remain here a little longer, those images begin to soften and lose their sharpness. The life you are about to step into is not one of constant excitement, but something slower, heavier, and far more real. It is shaped by repetition and endurance, by long stretches of time where very little seems to change at all. And before any of this began, before the black flag, before the shared plunder, before the strange sense of freedom you now feel, you were simply a sailor. Not remarkable. Not heroic. Just one of many young men standing on the deck of a merchant vessel somewhere in the early years of the 18th century. Your world then was small and contained, bounded by wood and rope and water stretching endlessly in every direction. The day never really began so much as it resumed, because it had never truly ended. You would be pulled from sleep by the sharp call of the boatswain, his voice cutting through the darkness without patience or hesitation. Your body would resist at first, heavy and sore, your muscles still carrying the weight of the day before. But resistance meant nothing out here. You would rise because you had to. Because the ship demanded it, and the ship always came first. The air around you would be damp and thick with the smell of salt and unwashed bodies and timber that never fully dried. As you climbed up onto the deck before the sun had even begun to rise, the cold would meet you immediately, sharp and steady, settling into your skin. The work would already be waiting. Ropes stiff with dried salt scraping against your palms as you pulled them into place. Your fingers tightening around coarse fibers that bit into your skin until they hardened and cracked and healed only to be worn down again. Above you, the sails shifting restlessly with the wind, never still, never quiet, always demanding attention. And the masts rising high into the dark sky, swaying with the motion of the sea, requiring you to climb again and again, your body balancing against the movement below, the deck rolling gently beneath your feet, the ocean far below always in motion, always present. There was no moment when the work was finished. No pause where you could step back and feel a sense of completion. There was always something more. Another rope to secure. Another sail to adjust. Another section of deck to scrub clean of salt and grime. Water constantly seeping into the hull, gathering below in foul and stagnant pools that had to be pumped out again and again. And so your life became a cycle. Work. Exhaustion. Brief rest. And then work again. Measured not in days, but in tasks. Not in comfort, but in endurance. And for all of this, for every blister and every aching muscle, there was no certainty of reward. Your wages were distant, uncertain, something promised only at the end of the voyage. If the ship returned safely. If you survived. If the captain chose to pay you fairly. And you had already seen how easily that promise could be broken. Men who worked for months, even years, only to receive almost nothing. Their pay reduced by fines and punishments that seemed to appear without reason. Until what remained was barely enough to last a few days on land before they were forced to sign on to another voyage and begin again. And so even then, even before piracy had truly entered your life, the thought had already begun to form quietly in the back of your mind. That there must be something else. Something different. Because this endless cycle of labor and obedience could not be all there was. And it is in that quiet space, in that slow and growing dissatisfaction, that the idea of piracy first takes root. Not as a dream of adventure, but as a possibility. A dangerous one, certainly, but also a different one. And sometimes different is enough. And now, as the memory begins to fade, as the sound of that old ship slowly slips away, you find yourself once again here, standing on the deck of a very different vessel. The air feels sharper. The movement beneath your feet more alive. The men around you move differently. They speak more freely. There is no constant fear hanging over every action. No voice ready to strike you down for the smallest mistake. Instead, there is something else here. Something quieter, but stronger. A sense that this ship, for all its danger, belongs to those who stand upon it. And as the wind shifts and fills the sails above you, pulling the ship forward across the open sea, you feel the motion beneath your feet settle into something familiar. Something steady. And you begin to understand that while this life is not easier, it is yours in a way the other never was. And the sea stretches out before you, wide and endless and indifferent, carrying you forward into a future that is uncertain but no longer chosen for you. And as your hands once again reach for the ropes, falling back into the rhythm of movement and effort and quiet repetition, the day does not begin. And the rhythm settles back into your body so completely that you no longer notice when one task ends and another begins, your hands moving with a kind of quiet certainty, pulling, tightening, adjusting, as if they have learned the language of rope and wind without needing your thoughts to guide them. And the ship moves forward steadily, cutting through the water with a low and constant sound that you feel as much as you hear, a vibration beneath your feet, reminder that you are always in motion, always going somewhere even if you cannot yet see where, and the horizon remains unchanged, a thin line dividing sea and sky, holding its distance no matter how long you look at it, and for a time there is nothing else, no sails, no land, no sign of another life beyond your own, only this floating world of wood and canvas and men bound together by necessity, and as the hours pass the light grows stronger, the sun rising higher, warming the deck beneath your feet, drying the salt that clings to every surface, and still the work continues, because it must, because a ship left unattended is a ship already failing, and so you check the rigging again, and the sails again, and the lines that have not changed since the last time you checked them, because vigilance is the only thing that stands. Between survival and disaster out here, and even in calm weather there is always the understanding that the sea does not forgive carelessness, that it waits patiently for mistakes, and you have seen what happens when those mistakes are made, you have seen ropes snap without warning, sails tear loose in sudden gusts, men lose their footing and fall from heights that offer no second chance, and those memories remain with you quietly, not as fear exactly, but as a constant awareness, something that keeps your movements careful and your attention focused even when your mind begins to drift, and it does drift, slowly and without resistance, because there is so little to anchor it in the present, and so your thoughts wander again, not back to the merchant ship this time, but somewhere softer, somewhere quieter, to a place that no longer feels entirely real, the memory of land, of stillness beneath your feet, of spaces that do not move, of air that does not taste of salt, and you try to hold on to those details for a moment, the shape of a street, the sound of distant voices, the feeling of standing still without needing to balance yourself against the shifting world beneath you, but the memory slips, becoming less certain the longer you focus on it, and you realize with a quiet kind of understanding that the longer you remain out here, the more distant that other life becomes, not just in time, but in feeling, as if it belongs to someone else entirely, and this, what you are living now, begins to feel more real, more immediate, more permanent in a way that is difficult to explain, and the ship around you reinforces that feeling, its sounds constant, its movements predictable in their unpredictability, the creak of wood, the snap of canvas, the low murmur of voices, all blending together into something familiar, something that no longer feels foreign, and you begin to notice the others more clearly, not as strangers, but as parts of this same living system, each man moving within it, contributing to it, shaped by it, and there is a kind of understanding between you that does not need to be spoken, a shared knowledge of what this life demands and what it gives in return, and it is not comfort, not safety, but something else, something closer to equality, because here, for the first time, you are not entirely beneath someone else's will, and that difference, though subtle in the moment, changes everything, and as the sun reaches its highest point and begins its slow descent, the light shifting from bright to softer tones, your body grows tired again, not suddenly, but gradually, the weight of the day settling into your muscles, your movements becoming slower, heavier, and still you continue, because the work does not stop simply because you are tired, and when at last your watch ends, it does not feel like an event, only a quiet release. A step back from effort into something slightly less demanding, and you move below deck once more, the air greeting you with its familiar warmth and heaviness, thicker now after the heat of the day, and you find your space without thinking, your body already anticipating the brief rest it will receive, and the food is passed to you again, the same as before, hard and dry and unchanging, and you eat without complaint. Because there is no point in complaint, because hunger does not care for preference, and the taste is something you have already accepted, something that no longer surprises you, and the drink that follows, watered rum, burns slightly as it goes down, spreading a brief warmth through your chest, softening the edges of fatigue just enough to be noticed, and around you the others do the same, eating, drinking, resting, each man contained within his own quiet moment, and for a while there is very little sound, only the ship itself continuing its endless motion, and you lie back once more, the hammock swaying gently beneath you, your body adjusting to its movement without thought, and your eyes close, not fully, but enough to let the world fade slightly, and in that space between waking and sleep, time loses its shape again, stretching and folding in ways that no longer matter, because out here, time is not something you measure, it is something you endure, something that carries you forward whether you notice it or not, and above you the deck creaks softly. Footsteps passing overhead, the watch continuing without you now, the ship never resting, never pausing, always moving forward into the vast and indifferent expanse that surrounds it, and somewhere beyond the thin walls of wood and rope, the ocean continues its slow and endless motion, unchanged, unhurried, waiting as it always does, and you drift just slightly deeper into rest, knowing that it will not last, that soon enough you will rise again and return to the same rhythm, the same work. Same quiet existence that defines this life, and yet there is something within it, something steady and real, something that belongs to you in a way nothing before ever did, and that thought remains with you, even as sleep begins to take hold, even as the sounds of the ship soften and blend together, carrying you gently forward into the next moment, the next watch, the next unbroken stretch of time at sea. And that rest never feels complete, not because you are denied it, but because the body learns to expect interruption, to accept that sleep here is something taken in fragments rather than in full, and when you wake again it is not with a sense of renewal but with a quiet continuation, as if you have only paused briefly in a task that never truly ended, and you feel the motion of the ship before you even open your eyes, the slow rise and fall beneath you reminding you exactly where you are. And when you finally do open them the dimness below deck has not changed, the same low beams above, the same narrow space, the same faint mixture of smells that now feel almost familiar, and for a moment you remain still, listening, because even in this half-darkness the ship is never silent, there is always the sound of movement, the distant thud of footsteps above, the creak of timber shifting under pressure, the soft murmur of voices blending together without urgency, and then you move, not quickly, not reluctantly, simply because it is time again, and you rise from the hammock, your body responding with a quiet stiffness that you no longer question, and you make your way once more toward the ladder, climbing back into the open air where the light has already begun to change, softer now, the sun lower in the sky, casting longer shadows across the deck, and the sea reflects it in shifting patterns that never settle, and as you step forward into your place among the others there is no need for instruction. No need for direction, because you already know what must be done, and your hands return to the work as naturally as breathing, finding the ropes, testing the tension, adjusting what needs adjusting even if only slightly, because small corrections are everything here, small attentions that prevent larger failures, and the wind carries a steady force today, not harsh, not calm, just enough to keep the sails full and the ship moving with purpose, and you feel that movement in every part of your body, in the way you stand, in the way you shift your weight, always adjusting, always responding to something that cannot be seen directly but is always present, and the sky above begins to deepen in color as the day moves slowly toward evening, the light softening further, turning from gold to something warmer, more subdued, and with it the air begins to cool again, bringing a quiet relief after the long hours under the sun, and for a moment there is a sense of stillness, not in the ship, which never truly stills, but in the feeling of the day itself, as if it is pausing before it lets go, and you find your gaze drifting outward again, toward that same unchanging horizon, and it occurs to you how rarely anything breaks that line, how vast this space truly is, and how small your ship must appear within it, a single moving point in an endless expanse, and yet within this small space exists everything that matters to you now. Every voice, every face, every task, every moment, all contained within these wooden boundaries, and the thought is neither comforting nor unsettling, it simply is, a truth that settles quietly into your understanding, and somewhere nearby a voice calls out, not in alarm, not in urgency, but in recognition, and you follow the direction of it without thinking, your eyes narrowing slightly as you look out across the water, and for a moment you see nothing. Only the shifting surface of the sea reflecting the fading light, and then slowly, almost uncertainly. Not yet close enough to reveal its intent, but close enough to matter, and you remain where you are, your hands reach something begins to take shape far in the distance, not large, not clear, just a faint interruption in the line where sea meets sky, and you watch it carefully, your attention sharpening without effort, because this is different, this is change, and change out here always carries meaning, and the others notice it as well, one by one, their movements slowing just slightly, their focus shifting outward, and though no one speaks of it directly, there is an understanding passing quietly between you all, because a sail on the horizon is never just a sail, it is possibility, it is risk, it is the one thing that breaks the long stretch of sameness that defines your days, and as the ship continues forward, cutting steadily through the water, that distant shape grows just slightly more distinct, enough to confirm what you already know, that you are not alone out here after all. And something begins to shift within you, not excitement exactly, not fear, but a kind of alertness that settles into your body, sharpening your senses, bringing your thoughts back from wherever they had drifted, and the rhythm of the ship remains the same, the ropes still need tending, the sails still need watching, but now there is something layered over it, something that was not there before, and the quiet, unbroken flow of the day begins to change in a way that is subtle at first, but undeniable, and you feel it in the way the men around you move, slightly quicker now, slightly more focused, as if the entire ship has become aware of something beyond itself, something approaching slowly across the water, and the light continues to fade as the sun lowers further, casting long shadows that stretch across the deck, and the distant sail remains just that, distant, sting briefly against the rope you have been working, your eyes fixed on that small shape against the horizon. And in that moment, without needing words, you understand that the long stretch of waiting may be coming to an end, and whatever follows will not be quiet in the same way, and the ship carries you forward toward it, steadily, inevitably, as the last light of day begins to slip away and the sea darkens beneath you, holding its secrets just beyond reach, and as the light continues to fade the shape on the horizon grows clearer, not quickly, not dramatically, but enough that your eyes no longer question what they are seeing, a sail, small at this distance but undeniable, and the awareness of it settles across the deck like a quiet current passing through every man without the need for words, and the ship itself seems unchanged in its movement, still cutting steadily through the water, still held by the same wind, and yet everything feels different now, as if the long stretch of stillness has given way to something waiting just beneath the surface, and you notice the way the others begin to adjust, not rushing, not panicking, but moving with a purpose that was not there before, small changes at first, a rope checked again, a line tightened, a glance exchanged, and then gradually more deliberate actions, men shifting positions, hands moving with greater intention, eyes returning again and again to that distant point, and you find yourself doing the same, drawn back to it as if it holds something important, something that matters in a way the empty horizon never did, and the sky deepens further into evening, the colors softening into muted tones as the sun slips closer to the edge of the world, and the sea reflects it in darker shades now, the surface no longer bright but quietly shifting, and the air cools around you, carrying the scent of salt more sharply, and somewhere behind you a voice gives a low instruction, not shouted, not urgent, but clear enough to be heard, and the men nearest respond without hesitation. And the two ships come within reach of one another, their presence filling the space that had been empty for so long, and the long stretch of waiting that defined your days falls away completely, replaced now by something far more immediate, far more uncertain, and far more alive, as the world narrows to this single moment, this single place, where everything that follows will unfold. And in that instant the distance between the two ships ceases to be a stretch of open water and becomes something tangible, something that can be crossed, and the sounds around you rise, not into chaos, but into a sharp, controlled urgency, voices calling out, feet striking the deck with purpose, ropes pulled tight and secured with practiced speed, and you feel yourself moving with them, not thinking, not questioning, but simply acting as you have learned to do, your place among them no longer uncertain but fully claimed. And the ship responds as a single living thing, turning, adjusting, aligning itself with precision as the helmsman follows the captain's commands without hesitation, and the angle of approach shifts just enough to bring you alongside the other vessel in a way that is deliberate, calculated, and as the hulls draw nearer the first solid sounds of contact echo across the water, the deep wooden groan of timber brushing against timber, a vibration that travels through the deck beneath your feet and into your bones, grounding you in the reality of the moment, and the air fills with the scent of salt and tar and something sharper now, something metallic, something that carries the weight of what is about to happen, and you glance across, just for a heartbeat, and see the faces on the other side more clearly, men like you, their expressions tight with tension, their movements quick but uncertain, and in that brief exchange of sight there is no time for thought, only recognition. And then it is gone as your attention is pulled back to your own ship. Moving to their places, and you feel it then, not fear, not excitement, but a tightening of attention, a narrowing of focus that brings everything closer, sharper, more immediate, and the ship continues forward, closing the distance slowly, steadily, until the shape ahead begins to take on more detail, the outline of masts, the angle of sails, the suggestion of another vessel moving across the same vast space that you have come to think of as your own, and there is something strange in that realization, that after so much emptiness, so much isolation, another ship feels almost unfamiliar, almost intrusive, and yet it is also exactly what this life depends on, because without it there would be no purpose beyond survival, no break in the endless rhythm of work and waiting, and so you watch as it grows larger, as the distance between you shortens, and the quiet energy on deck builds in a way that is controlled, contained, held just beneath the surface, and the captain moves among the men now, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a presence that is immediately recognized, and his words are few, measured, each one carrying weight, and the crew responds with the same efficiency that has defined every other part of this life, each man understanding his role without needing it explained, and you feel yourself drawn into that same pattern, your body aligning with the expectation of what may come, your hands no longer resting but ready, your attention no longer drifting but fixed, and the distant ship is no longer distant now, its sails clear against the dimming sky, its movement visible, its existence undeniable, and for a moment there is a stillness between the two vessels, not in motion but in meaning, a space where possibilities exist but have not yet taken form, and the wind holds steady, filling your sails, carrying you closer still, and the light fades further, the last edge of the sun slipping below the horizon, leaving behind a softer glow that lingers just long enough to outline the shapes before darkness begins to take hold, and in that fading light decisions are made, not with hesitation but with certainty, because out here hesitation carries its own risks, and the quiet rhythm of the day gives way to something else entirely, something sharper, something more immediate, and you feel it settle into your chest, into your hands, into the way you stand upon the deck, balanced and ready, and the ship moves forward into the gathering dark, closing the final distance as the world around you shifts from the endless calm of waiting into the uncertain edge of action, and whatever happens next is already in motion, already unfolding, carried forward by wind and water and the choices of men who have left one life behind and now stand together in another, where the horizon no longer promises only emptiness but something far less predictable, and far more real. Leaving behind a softer glow that lingers just long enough to outline the shapes before darkness begins to take hold, and in that fading light decisions are made, not with hesitation but with certainty, because out here hesitation carries its own risks, and the quiet rhythm of the day gives way to something else entirely, something sharper, something more immediate, and you feel it settle into your chest, into your hands, into the way you stand upon the deck, balanced and ready, and the ship moves forward into the gathering dark, closing the final distance as the world around you shifts from the endless calm of waiting into the uncertain edge of action, and whatever happens next is already in motion, already unfolding, carried forward by wind and water and the choices of men who have left one life behind and now stand together in another, where the horizon no longer promises only emptiness but something far less predictable, and far more real. And the darkness settles more fully now, not all at once but in layers, the last traces of light fading from the water until the sea becomes a deeper, heavier presence around you, something felt more than seen, and the other ship remains ahead, its outline still visible against the dim sky, a darker shape against darkness, and as you draw closer the details sharpen just enough to reveal movement on its deck. Small figures shifting in response to your approach, and you realize that just as you have been watching them, they have been watching you, each vessel aware of the other, each measuring distance and intent without a single word exchanged, and the wind continues to hold steady, carrying both ships along their paths, bringing you nearer with each passing moment, and around you the crew moves with quiet precision, no wasted motion, no unnecessary sound, the earlier rhythm of routine work now replaced by something more focused, more deliberate, and you feel your own body responding. In kind, your awareness narrowing, your senses sharpening, every small sound and movement registering more clearly than before, the creak of the deck beneath your feet, the pull of the rope in your hands, the faint shift in the wind against your face, and somewhere nearby the captain gives another low command, and this time it carries a different weight, a signal not just of preparation but of intention, and the men respond immediately, their positions adjusting, their attention fixed entirely on the ship ahead, and for a moment there is a strange calm that settles over everything, not the calm of emptiness but the calm that comes just before something begins, a pause in which all movement feels suspended even as the ships continue to close the distance between them, and you become aware of your own breathing, steady but deeper now, your grip tightening slightly without conscious thought, and the space between the two vessels shrinks further. Until the sounds from the other ship begin to carry across the water, faint at first, indistinct, but unmistakable, voices, movement, the same life that exists on your own deck mirrored in a different form, and the realization of that shared existence passes through you briefly, a reminder that the men over there are not so different from you, not in the work they have done, not in the lives they have lived. And yet in this moment the difference between you has become absolute, defined not by who you are but by where you stand, and the wind shifts slightly, just enough to alter the angle of your approach, and the helmsman adjusts without hesitation, guiding your ship with careful precision, positioning it not randomly but with intent, and the captain's focus remains fixed ahead, his presence steady, his decisions shaping every movement of the vessel, and as you draw nearer still the tension becomes something you can feel physically, not sharp, not overwhelming, but constant, like a pressure that builds quietly beneath the surface, and the other ship is close enough now that you can see the lines of its hull, the structure of its masts, the way its sails hang in the dim light, and there is no longer any uncertainty, only the understanding that this encounter is no longer avoidable, no longer distant, but immediate, and the final moments of approach stretch in a way that feels longer than they should, time slowing not in reality but in perception, each second carrying more weight than the last, and you remain where you are, your body steady despite the movement beneath you, your attention fixed forward, and then, without any sudden break, without any dramatic signal, the moment shifts, the quiet giving way to action in a way that feels both abrupt and inevitable, as if it had been building all along, and the stillness that held everything in place dissolves, replaced by motion, by voices rising, by commands spoken with clarity and force. Just another ship on the vast ocean, carrying with it the remnants of what it once held, and you watch it recede into the darkness, its shape growing smaller, less distinct, until it becomes once again a part of the horizon, and then it is gone, leaving only your own ship moving forward, steady as before, and you stand there for a moment, feeling the shift, the return to the endless expanse, but knowing now that it is not quite the same as it was, because you have seen what breaks that emptiness, you have been part of it, and as the crew settles back into their roles, as the watch is re-established and the routine resumes, you feel the quiet weight of what has just happened settle into you, not as excitement, not as fear, but as understanding, a deeper sense of the life you have chosen, and the way it moves between stillness and action, between waiting and taking, between the long quiet days and the brief, intense moments that define everything, and the ship continues on its course, guided by wind and will, carrying you forward into whatever comes next, the dark sea stretching endlessly ahead, no longer empty, but full of possibility, and consequence, and the steady, unbroken flow of a life that now belongs to you. And with the other ship now swallowed by distance and darkness, the last traces of the encounter fade not into silence, but into something familiar, something steady, as the rhythm of life aboard your vessel reasserts itself almost without effort, as if it had only been paused for a moment rather than broken, and you begin to feel that shift within yourself as well, the heightened edge of awareness softening, your breathing settling, your hands returning to their ordinary tasks, and the voices around you lower again into the quiet exchanges of men who have done what needed to be done and now move on without ceremony, without lingering, because this is not an ending, only a continuation, and the quartermaster gives his final instructions for the night. To the men beside you, to the orders that continue to come, each one clear, direct, leaving no room for hesitation, and the grappling hooks are brought forward, heavy iron shapes that swing for a moment before being cast outward with force, arcing through the dim light and striking the rail of the other ship with a solid, final sound, and the ropes attached to them snap taut as they are pulled back, binding the two vessels together in a way that feels both violent and inevitable, and the gap that remained between you closes, replaced now by a narrow, shifting boundary that can be crossed in a single step, and the energy that has been building reaches its peak, not exploding but focusing, narrowing into action, and the command comes, not shouted wildly but delivered with absolute certainty, and the men respond as one, surging forward, and you move with them, your body carrying you across the boundary between ships before your mind can fully catch up, your boots striking the unfamiliar deck with a force that confirms your arrival, and the world becomes immediate, compressed into movement and sound and sensation, the clash of bodies, the sharp ring of steel, the shouted voices that blur together into something raw and unfiltered, and yet within it all there is still a structure, a pattern, the result of men who know what they are doing even in the midst of violence, and you find your footing, your balance adjusting to the new surface beneath you, your awareness splitting between everything at once, the movement to your left, the presence to your right, the shifting space ahead, and time feels different here, not slower, not faster, but more intense, each moment carrying a weight that demands your full attention, and then, just as quickly as it began, the resistance falters, not all at once but in pieces, the tension breaking, the momentum shifting, and the fight loses its shape, dissolving into scattered movements. Into surrender, into the quiet that follows when the outcome is no longer in question, and the noise fades, leaving behind only the heavy sound of breathing, the creak of wood, the distant movement of water against the hulls, and you stand there, your chest rising and falling, your hands still tight with the memory of action, and you look around, taking in what remains, the two ships bound together, the men gathered, some standing, some seated, all caught in the aftermath of something that has already passed, and the realization settles over you slowly, not as a sudden thought but as a quiet understanding, that you have crossed another threshold, not just between ships, but further into this life you have chosen, and there is no clear line marking where you began and where you are now, only a series of moments like this one, each carrying you forward, shaping you in ways you may not fully see yet. And the night closes in around you, deeper now, wrapping the scene in shadow, and the work begins again, not the work of maintenance or routine, but the work that follows, the gathering, the securing, the steady, methodical process that turns action into outcome, and you find yourself drawn back into that rhythm once more, your place within it no longer new, no longer uncertain, but simply part of what is, as the ship, and the men upon it, continue onward into the dark, carrying with them the results of what has just unfolded, and the promise of what is still to come. And as the last resistance fades and the tension drains from the air, what remains is not silence exactly, but a quieter kind of movement, a return to order, and you feel it almost immediately, the way the men shift from the sharp intensity of action into something measured and deliberate, as if a switch has been turned, and the chaos that seemed overwhelming only moments ago resolves itself into purpose, into roles, into tasks that are understood without being spoken aloud. And the quartermaster steps forward, his presence steady, his voice calm but carrying easily across the deck, and it is his authority now that guides everything, not with force, but with certainty, and the crew responds in kind, their movements aligning with his direction, and you watch as the captured sailors are gathered, not roughly, not needlessly cruel, but firmly, efficiently, their weapons taken, their space confined. And there is a strange contrast in it, the same men who moments ago moved with violence now acting with restraint, with control, as if the purpose has already shifted from conquest to management, and you find yourself breathing more steadily now, your body easing out of the tight focus that held it, though the awareness remains, the heightened sense of everything around you not yet fully gone, and the two ships remain bound together, their hulls pressing gently with the movement of the sea, the ropes between them creaking softly with each rise and fall, and Above, the sails hang in the night air, catching what little wind there is, keeping both vessels steady, and the sky has darkened fully now, the last traces of dusk gone, replaced by a deep expanse scattered with stars, and for a moment you notice them, distant and unmoving, a quiet reminder of the vastness that surrounds all of this, and then your attention returns to the deck, to the work unfolding around you, and you begin to understand more clearly how this part of the life functions, how what has been taken is not simply grabbed or fought over, but handled with a kind of order that feels almost unexpected, and the quartermaster's team moves through the ship methodically, opening chests, inspecting cargo, noting what is there, and you see that nothing is rushed, nothing is left to chance, because what matters now is not speed but accuracy, fairness, the trust that each man has in the system that governs them. And you are drawn into it as well, assigned a simple task. Something small but necessary, and you carry it out alongside the others, your movements now part of the larger process, and as you work you begin to notice the details, the kinds of goods that fill the hold, barrels stacked tightly, crates secured with rope, bundles of cloth wrapped and protected, and it becomes clear that this is where the true value lies, not in some imagined chest of gold, but in these ordinary things that carry worth because of where they will go next, and the realization settles in quietly, reshaping your understanding of what this life truly offers, and around you the men continue, their voices low, their actions steady, and time begins to stretch again, not in the same empty way as before, but in a slower, more grounded rhythm, where each moment connects to the next through work that has purpose, and eventually the transfer begins, goods moving from one ship to the other, carried carefully across the narrow space, secured once aboard, counted, checked, and you take part in this as well, your hands moving with growing confidence, your place within the crew no longer something you question, and as the hours pass the initial intensity of the encounter fades completely, replaced by the familiar pattern of effort and cooperation, and the night deepens around you, the sounds of the sea returning to prominence, the gentle wash of water against wood, the soft pull of ropes under tension, and above it all the quiet murmur of men working together, and when at last the task is complete, when everything of value has been taken and secured, the two ships remain side by side for a moment longer, as if acknowledging what has passed between them, and then the process of separation begins, the ropes loosened, the hooks withdrawn, each action reversing what was done before, and slowly, carefully, the distance returns, the gap reopening, the connection dissolving, and the captured vessel drifts away, no longer a target, no longer a threat, but out of expectation, and the day continues, the sun moving across the sky, the watching again and again, the 59. Routine never breaking, and yet never feeling entirely the same, because you are no longer the same within it, and as evening approaches once more, the light beginning its slow descent, you feel the cycle preparing to repeat, the familiar transition from day to night, from clarity to shadow, from openness to uncertainty, and you stand there on the deck, your gaze fixed on the horizon, aware of the endless stretch of sea before you, aware of the ship beneath you, and aware of yourself within it. No longer an observer, no longer someone imagining this life, but someone living it fully, each moment connected to the next in a continuous, unbroken flow, and the journey carries on, without pause, without end, into whatever lies beyond the next line where sea meets sky. And as the light begins its slow descent once again, you notice how familiar this transition has already become, the way the sun lowers toward the horizon without urgency, the sky shifting through its quiet colors, and the sea reflecting it all in a restless, ever-moving mirror, and you stand there feeling not the weight of time passing, but the continuity of it, the sense that nothing here truly begins or ends, it only changes, flowing from one state into another without pause, and the ship continues forward, steady and certain, its course set not just by the wind but by the will of the men upon it, and you feel yourself fully part of that now, no longer separate, no longer uncertain, but carried within the same current that moves everything else, and the sounds of the day soften gradually, voices lowering, movements becoming less hurried, the work easing into its evening rhythm, and somewhere nearby the faint sound of music begins, the fiddler drawing his bow across the strings. With a slow, steady motion, the melody drifting across the deck and out over the water. His tone measured, his authority unquestioned, ensuring that everything is secured, that every item taken is accounted for, that nothing is misplaced or hidden, and you see how seriously this is taken, how the fairness of it all is not just a rule written on parchment but a living principle that governs every action, and you understand now that this is what holds everything together, not fear, not force, but a shared agreement that each man's share will be honored, that no one will be cheated. And that trust, once broken, would unravel everything, and so the work is done carefully, deliberately, until there is nothing left to do but return to the watch, and you find yourself once again in that familiar cycle, the 4-hour rhythm that divides your life into segments of duty and rest, and you take your place without hesitation, the motions now known to you, the expectations clear. And the ship moves forward through the night as it always has, the sails catching the wind, the hull cutting through the water with a steady, unbroken motion, and above you the stars stretch endlessly, brighter now that the sky is fully dark, their patterns slowly shifting as the hours pass, and somewhere on deck a quiet conversation begins, low voices sharing thoughts, observations, perhaps even fragments of the recent encounter, not in excitement, but in reflection, in the simple way men process what has happened. And you listen without fully engaging, your mind drifting between the present and the memory of what you have just experienced, the sounds, the movement, the feeling of crossing from one ship to another, and you realize that it no longer feels distant or unreal, it feels immediate, something that belongs to you now, part of your own story rather than something you have only heard about, and that realization carries a certain weight, not heavy, but steady, something that settles into you quietly, shaping the way you see what lies ahead, and the hours pass in this way. The watch continuing, the tasks performed, until at last you are relieved, another man taking your place, and you step back from duty, your body aware of its own fatigue now that the focus has eased, and you make your way below deck, the air warmer, thicker, filled with the familiar mixture of scents that define this space, and you find your hammock, slipping into it with a practiced motion, the canvas holding you as it sways gently with the movement of the ship, and around you the sounds of the crew settling in create a kind of quiet backdrop, the low murmur of voices, the rustle of fabric, the occasional creak of wood, and you close your eyes, not forcing sleep but allowing it to come as it will, your mind still carrying fragments of the night, images that drift in and out without forming into anything fixed, and gradually they begin to fade, replaced by the simple sensation of rest, of your body recovering from the effort, from the tension, from the long hours of both waiting. And action and time moves forward again, not marked by events but by the slow passage of the night into morning, and when you wake it is not to anything dramatic, not to a call of alarm or urgency, but to the same quiet shift that begins every day, the subtle increase of light filtering down, the sounds of men stirring, the return of movement as the ship continues on its course, and for a moment you lie there, suspended between sleep and wakefulness, aware of where you are, aware of what has past, and aware that it is now simply part of the ongoing flow of this life, and then you rise, stepping back into the routine once more, the cycle continuing without pause, without break, as the sea stretches endlessly around you, and the ship carries you forward into another day, another watch, another stretch of time that may hold nothing at all, or everything, and you understand now that this is the nature of it, this constant movement between stillness and action, between the ordinary and the extraordinary, all woven together into a single unbroken thread, a life that does not stop, does not pause, but simply continues, carrying you with it, moment by moment, hour by hour, across the vast and ever-changing expanse of the open sea. And the morning does not arrive with any grand announcement, only a slow, quiet lifting of darkness, the black of the night softening into deep blue, and then into a pale gray that spreads across the horizon, and with it the ship begins to take shape again around you, the outlines of masts and ropes and sails returning to clarity, the faces of the men around you becoming visible once more, and the world, which felt so enclosed and immediate in the night, opens outward again into the vastness of the sea, stretching in every direction without boundary, and you rise fully now, the last traces of sleep leaving you as your body settles back into its familiar rhythm, and the watch changes as it always does, quietly, efficiently, without ceremony, one group of men stepping aside as another takes their place, and you step forward into your duty, your hands already knowing what to do before your mind fully catches up. And the work begins again, steady and unbroken, the sails adjusted, the lines checked, the deck inspected, each task small on its own but essential to the whole, and as you move through it you feel something different within yourself, not a dramatic change, not something that announces itself loudly, but a quiet shift, a deeper sense of belonging, as if the events of the night have settled something that was still uncertain before, and you no longer feel like someone who has just joined this life, but someone who is part of it, shaped by it, carried along by its rhythm without resistance, and the ship moves forward under a clear morning sky, the wind steady, the sea calm but alive, its surface broken by small rolling waves that catch the light as the sun rises higher. And around you the men speak more freely now, their voices carrying across the deck in casual conversation, the tension of the previous night gone, replaced by the ease that comes from shared experience, and you hear fragments of those conversations, remarks about the cargo, about the way the other ship handled itself, about small details that might seem unimportant to an outsider but matter here. In this world where observation and memory can mean the difference between success and failure. And you find yourself listening, absorbing, adding your own small thoughts when they come, and no one questions your place among them, no one treats you as anything other than what you now are, one of them, and the realization of that settles in quietly, without pride, without hesitation, simply as a fact, and the hours pass in a steady cycle of the watch, the sun climbing, the air warming, the work continuing, and yet beneath it all there is the lingering awareness of what lies ahead, the knowledge that this pattern will repeat, that the long stretches of calm will be broken again by moments of action, that each encounter will bring its own challenges, its own risks, its own rewards, and that this is the life you have chosen, not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because it is yours, and as the day unfolds you begin to notice the smaller details again, the way the light shifts across the deck, the sound of the wind in the sails, the rhythm of the ship beneath your feet, and these things, once background, now feel more immediate, more present, as if your senses have adjusted to this world, tuned themselves to its patterns, and the vastness of the ocean, which once felt empty, now feels full, not with objects, but with possibility, with unseen paths and unknown encounters, and you understand that every horizon holds something, even if you cannot yet see it, and that understanding changes the way you look out across the water, no longer searching out of boredom. Your mind no longer searching for escape from the rhythm but fully aligned with it, and the ocean around you becomes less of an obstacle and more of a presence, something vast and alive, something that shapes everything you do without ever needing to announce itself, and the sky above mirrors it, endless and shifting, guiding and observing all at once, and you find yourself caught between these two infinities, the sea below and the stars above, and within that space your life unfolds, moment by moment, without interruption, without clear beginning or end, and the watch system continues to divide your time, but even that begins to blur, the boundaries between work and rest softening as your body adjusts, as your mind accepts the repetition, and the small details of each day become more noticeable, more significant, the way the wind changes slightly in the afternoon, the way the light falls differently on the deck depending on the angle of the sun, the way the sounds of the ship shift, depending on the pressure of the sea beneath it, and these details, once overlooked, now form the texture of your existence, grounding you in the present, keeping you connected to the reality of where you are and what you are doing, and the men around you become more familiar as well, not just as faces or voices, but as individuals, each with their own habits, their own rhythms, their own ways of moving through this shared life. And you begin to recognize them without thinking, to anticipate their actions, to understand the unspoken communication that passes between them, and in that understanding you find a deeper sense of belonging, a quiet acknowledgement that you are no longer an outsider, no longer someone observing this world, but someone fully integrated within it, and the days pass in this way, the ship moving steadily across the open sea, the horizon unchanging and yet never truly the same, and then, as always, something shifts, not suddenly, not dramatically, blending with the natural sounds of the sea in a way that feels almost seamless, and the men listen, some quietly, some with small nods of recognition, and you find yourself listening too, not actively, but as part of the moment, the music filling the spaces between thought, and as it continues you begin to notice how it changes the atmosphere, how it softens the edges of the day, how it brings a kind of calm that is not the absence of activity, but a balance between what has been done and what is yet to come, and the sky darkens further, the first stars appearing once more, faint at first and then clearer as the last light fades, and the ship becomes a small world again, contained within the vastness around it, defined by the presence of those upon it rather than anything beyond, and the watch continues as it always does, the cycle unbroken, and you take your place when your time comes. Stepping into the familiar pattern of duty, your movements now almost instinctive, your awareness tuned to the needs of the moment, and as you stand there, looking out across the darkening sea, you realize that the horizon no longer feels distant in the same way it once did, it feels connected, part of a continuous space that you are moving through rather than something separate from you, and that understanding brings with it a quiet sense of clarity, a recognition that this life, with all its hardship, all its uncertainty, all its brief moments of intensity, is not something you are passing through, it is something you are living fully, and the night deepens, the stars brightening overhead, their patterns steady and ancient, guiding those who know how to read them, and the ship moves beneath them with quiet confidence, its path set, its purpose clear, and the hours pass in that steady rhythm, the watch turning, the tasks completed, the silence of the open sea broken only by the sounds of the vessel and the low voices of the men. And somewhere within that flow you find a sense of balance, not in the absence of danger or difficulty, but in the acceptance of it, in the understanding that everything here is part of the same unbroken thread, and as the night continues, stretching onward without end, you remain at your post, your gaze fixed on the horizon, your body steady against the movement beneath you, and your mind no longer searching for something beyond this moment, but fully present within it, as the ship carries you forward once more, into the dark, into the unknown, and into the next quiet turning of this endless, continuous life at sea. And the night stretches onward in that same steady, unbroken rhythm, the kind that no longer feels empty but full in its own quiet way, and as the hours pass you begin to sense how deeply this pattern has settled into you, how your thoughts no longer wander as restlessly as they once did, but move in time with the motion of the ship, with the slow rise and fall beneath your feet, with the endless horizon that surrounds you. And the stars above seem sharper now, clearer, as if your eyes have learned to read them not just as distant lights, but as markers, as guides, as part of the same system that carries you forward through the dark, and you find yourself watching them without effort, tracing their positions, noticing their slow shift across the sky, and somewhere behind you the quiet voice of the captain carries for a moment, low and measured, speaking to the helmsman, adjusting the course by a degree so small it would mean nothing to anyone not living this life, and yet here it matters. Here every small correction shapes the path ahead, and the ship responds with a subtle change, almost imperceptible, and you feel it not as a movement but as a difference in balance, a slight shift in the way the deck holds beneath you, and it reminds you again how alive this vessel truly is, how it listens, how it answers, how it carries the will of its crew across a world that offers no fixed road, no solid ground, and the hours continue to pass, marked only by the changing of the watch, by the quiet footsteps of men taking and leaving their posts, and when your time comes again to rest, you step away without hesitation, your body already anticipating the brief relief, and below deck the air is thick and warm, the familiar scent of wood and salt and men surrounding you, and you settle into your hammock once more. The gentle sway holding you in place as the ship moves steadily on, and sleep comes more easily now, not because the conditions have changed, but because you have, because your body has learned to accept this motion, this space, this life, as normal, and your mind no longer resists it, and when you wake again it is to another morning, another slow return of light, another beginning that does not feel like a beginning at all, but simply a continuation of everything that came before, and you rise, stepping back into the cycle without pause, without question, and the day unfolds as it always does, the work steady, the conversations light, the endless sea stretching around you, and yet within that sameness there is always the awareness that something may come, that the horizon may change, that another sail may appear, and that awareness keeps you alert, keeps you engaged, keeps you part of the flow rather than lost within it. And as the sun climbs and the hours pass you find yourself reflecting, not in a deep or heavy way, but in a quiet, almost distant sense, on the life you left behind, the merchant ship, the endless labor, the lack of control, the certainty of hardship without reward, and you compare it to this, to the risks you now face, the uncertainty, the danger, and yet also the freedom, the equality, the shared purpose, and you understand more clearly than ever why you made the choice you did, why so many others have done the same, because here, even in its Hardship. There is ownership, there is dignity, there is a sense that what you do matters to you as much as it does to anyone else, and that realization settles into you with a quiet strength, reinforcing the path you are now on, and the day continues, the watching, the work repeating, the ship moving ever forward, and as the horizon remains empty, as no sail appears, you do not feel disappointment, not in the way you once might have, because you now understand that this waiting, this stillness, is as much a part of the life as anything else, that it is not wasted time, but necessary time, time in which the ship is maintained, the crew rests, the mind steadies, preparing for the moments when everything will change again, and so you stand there, your hands steady, your gaze fixed outward, your thoughts aligned with the rhythm of the sea, and the life continues, unbroken, uninterrupted, flowing forward without pause, carrying you deeper into it with every passing hour, every passing day. Every quiet moment that builds toward whatever comes next, and you no longer question it, no longer resist it, you simply move with it, fully, completely, as part of something larger than yourself, something that stretches beyond sight, beyond time, across the endless expanse of the open ocean. And so the days continue to unfold, not as separate moments, but as a single, unbroken current, each hour flowing into the next with a quiet inevitability, and you begin to understand that this is the true nature of life at sea, not the brief flashes of action, not the rare encounters that break the horizon, but this steady, continuous existence where time stretches and bends and settles into something almost timeless, and the ship carries you forward without pause, its motion constant. Its purpose clear, and you move within it as naturally now as you once did on solid ground, your balance sure, your hands steady. But enough to be noticed, a slight change in the wind, a different pattern in the movement of the water, a subtle variation in the behavior of the birds that sometimes follow the ship, and these small signs are enough to draw attention, enough to remind you that even within this steady flow, change is always possible, always waiting just beyond the edge of perception, and you find yourself watching more closely again, your senses sharpening, your awareness expanding outward, scanning the horizon not out of habit, but out of expectation, and the crew around you responds in the same quiet way, no orders given, no alarms raised, but a collective shift in attention that moves through the ship like a current, and the routine continues, the work does not stop, but beneath it there is something else now, a readiness, a sense that the balance may soon tip once again, that the long stretch of calm may give way to something more, and you stand there, feeling it, understanding it, not with certainty but with experience, and the ship carries you forward into that possibility, into whatever lies beyond the next horizon, the next hour, the next moment, and you no longer question what will come, you simply remain present, steady, prepared, as the life you have chosen continues to unfold around you in one long, continuous flow, unbroken and unrelenting, stretching endlessly across the vast and ever-changing sea. And that quiet shift in the air, that subtle change you can feel more than see, begins to take shape as the hours pass, not in any sudden way, but gradually, like something emerging from beneath the surface, and your eyes return again and again to the horizon, drawn there by instinct now rather than curiosity, and the men around you do the same, their movements unchanged on the surface, their tasks carried out with the same steady rhythm, and yet beneath it all there is that shared awareness. That sense that something is different, and the sea itself seems to reflect it. The pattern of the waves slightly altered, the wind carrying a tone that feels just a fraction sharper, and you stand at your post, your hands resting where they should be, your balance steady, your gaze fixed outward, and then, slowly, almost reluctantly, it appears, not clearly at first, not as a defined shape, but as the faintest suggestion of something interrupting the perfect line where sea meets sky, and you narrow your eyes, focusing, letting your vision adjust, and the shape holds, it does not vanish, it does not shift with the movement of the water, and you know what it is even before it becomes clear, even before the call is made, because you have seen it before now, you have felt this moment once already, and it returns not as something new, but as something familiar, something expected, and the word spreads across the deck, not shouted, but carried from one man to another, until it reaches everyone, and the ship responds in that same quiet, controlled way, the rhythm tightening, the focus sharpening, and you feel it within yourself as well, the steady calm giving way to that same narrow clarity, that same readiness that strips away everything unnecessary and leaves only what matters, and the distant shape grows slowly, resolving itself into the unmistakable outline of another vessel, its sails catching the light, its hull cutting through the water, and the distance between you begins to close. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with a certainty that cannot be ignored, and the captain moves once more among the crew, his presence steady, his voice low but precise, each instruction given with intent, and the men respond as they always do, their actions aligning, their positions shifting, and you move with them, your place within the pattern now fully understood, your role clear, and the long hours of waiting, of routine, of steady, unbroken flow, begin to gather themselves into something else, something more immediate, more focused. And the ship itself seems to sense it, its movement feeling sharper, more directed, as if it too understands what is coming, and the horizon, which has stretched endlessly for so long, now narrows to a single point, a single place where everything is about to converge, and you stand there, fully present, fully aware, not caught in the moment, but part of it, carried forward by it. And the life you have chosen reveals itself once again in its true form, not as a series of separate events, but as a continuous, flowing path where each moment leads naturally into the next, where calm gives way to action and action returns to calm without ever truly breaking the thread, and as the distance closes and the details of the approaching ship become clearer, you feel no hesitation, no doubt, only the steady certainty of what you are and where you belong, and the ship carries you onward into this next turning of the cycle, into another encounter, another moment that will rise, unfold, and pass, becoming part of the same endless flow that defines your life upon the open sea. And this time, as the distance closes and the shapes sharpen, there is no sense of surprise left in you at all, only recognition, only the quiet understanding of how this moment will unfold, not in its exact details, but in its rhythm, in its flow, in the way calm gathers itself into action and then releases again, and you feel that rhythm settle into your body as naturally as the motion of the ship beneath your feet. And the wind holds steady, filling the sails, carrying you forward with a certainty that feels almost inevitable, and the other vessel grows larger, clearer, no longer a question on the horizon but a presence, solid and real, and the men around you move with that same quiet precision, no wasted motion, no unnecessary words, only the small, efficient actions that prepare the ship for what comes next, and you find yourself moving with them without thought, your hands knowing their work, your eyes knowing where to look, your body aligned with the purpose of the moment, and the captain's voice comes again, low and controlled, guiding the final approach, and the helmsman responds, adjusting the course with subtle shifts that bring the two ships into alignment, and the sea between you narrows until it feels less like distance and more like a boundary waiting to be crossed, and the light catches on the water in fragments, reflecting the sky above, and for a brief moment everything seems suspended, held in a balance that cannot last, and then, just as before, that balance gives way, not in chaos, but in movement, in action that flows naturally from everything that has come before, and you step forward with the others, not driven by impulse, but carried by the same steady current that has guided you through every moment since you chose this life, and the ships draw together. The sounds of wood and rope and water merging into a single, living presence, and you cross that narrow space once more, not as someone uncertain, not as someone new, but as someone who belongs fully to this world now, and the moment unfolds around you, not separate from the rest of your life, but as part of it, another turn in the endless cycle, another expression of the same continuous flow, and even as action fills the space, even as voices rise and movement quickens, there is a deeper stillness beneath it all, a sense that this, too, will pass, that it will settle, that it will return once more to the steady rhythm that defines everything here, and you move through it with that understanding, grounded, present, aware, and when it ends, as it always does, it does not feel like a conclusion, only a transition, a return to the flow that never truly stops, and the ship, your ship, carries you onward again, through the fading light, through the gathering dark, through the endless stretch of sea and time, and you no longer measure this life in separate events or isolated moments, but as one continuous journey, one unbroken path that stretches out before you without end, and you follow it without hesitation, without doubt, simply moving forward, always forward, into whatever comes next. And once again, just as before, the intensity rises and then gently recedes, not leaving emptiness behind, but returning you to that same steady current that never truly stopped flowing beneath it all, and the aftermath settles over the ship like a quiet tide, the sharp edges of action softening into routine, into purpose, into the familiar work that follows every encounter, and you move through it without resistance. Your body already accustomed to the transition, your mind no longer trying to separate one moment from the next, because you understand now that there is no real separation, only continuation, only the same life unfolding in different forms, and the quartermaster takes control as he always does, his presence calm, his instructions clear, guiding the process with fairness and precision, and the crew responds with the same trust, the same discipline that holds everything together. And you take your place within that process, your hands steady as you help secure what has been taken, your movements efficient, your attention focused not on what has passed but on what must be done now, and the ship itself seems to settle as well, its motion returning to that familiar rhythm, the creak of its timbers, the pull of its ropes, the steady push of the wind against its sails, all blending into the background once more, and the night deepens around you, the sky stretching wide and silent above, the stars watching without judgment, without change, and you feel a kind of quiet clarity settle within you, not born of reflection, but of experience, of having lived this cycle enough times now to understand it not just in thought, but in being, and the work continues until it is done, until everything is secured, accounted for. And when you step ashore again, you feel that strange shift once more, the solid ground beneath your feet, the noise and movement of a place filled with people, with life that exists beyond the confines of the ship, and yet even here, you understand that this too is part of the same flow, the same pattern that will carry you back to Thand, yet still part of the same unbroken journey. When land finally rises on the horizon, it does so slowly, almost reluctantly, a faint line that grows into shape, into color, into detail, and as you approach, the smell of earth and vegetation begins to mix with the salt air, a reminder of a world that feels both familiar and distant at the same time, and the crew begins to prepare, not with urgency, but with practiced ease, each man knowing what is to be done. And you take your place among them, your movements as natural as theirs, your role no longer uncertain, and the ship glides toward the harbor, toward the temporary pause that land provides, not an end, not even a true break, but simply another turn in the cycle. Soon enough, and you no longer see it as an escape or a reward, but as another expression of the life you have chosen, another movement within the same continuous rhythm. Days pass, perhaps weeks, and the cycle begins again, the call to return, the preparations, the quiet gathering of the crew, and you find that there is no hesitation in you now, no doubt, no question of whether you belong here, because you already know the answer. It is written not in words, but in the way you move, in the way you think, in the way you have come to understand this life not as a series of separate events, but as a single, continuous journey that carries you forward without pause. And so you return to the ship, stepping once more onto the deck that has become your home, feeling the familiar motion beneath your feet, hearing the same sounds, breathing the same air, and it does not feel like a beginning. And placed within the order that defines this life, and then, without any formal signal, the ship returns fully to its steady course, the moment of action dissolving completely into the greater flow, and you stand there for a while, looking out across the dark water, the horizon once again open, endless, unchanged, and yet not the same as it was before, because you are not the same, because each of these moments, each turn of the cycle, shapes you in small, almost imperceptible ways, and you carry those changes forward with you, woven into the rhythm of your days and nights, and when your watch ends you step away, your body aware of its fatigue, your mind quiet, no longer holding on to the intensity of what has happened, and below deck the familiar space welcomes you back, the sway of your hammock steady and reassuring, and you lie there, listening to the sounds of the ship, the low murmur of voices, the distant wash of water, and you realize that this, too, is part of it, this return, this rest, this continuation, and sleep comes as it always does, not as an escape, but as another phase of the same unbroken flow, and when you wake it is to another day, another stretch of time that carries you forward, the cycle repeating, not as something dull or meaningless, but as something constant, something that defines the very nature of this life, and you rise once more, stepping into it without hesitation, without question, fully a part of the endless movement that carries you across the sea, through calm and action alike, through light and darkness, through every moment that comes and passes, all of it connected, all of it continuous, all of it yours, and as the next day unfolds, it does so without announcement, without any clear boundary that separates it from the last, because out here time does not move in clean divisions, it drifts, it blends, it stretches and folds into itself. And you feel it not by clocks or calendars, but by the rhythm of your own body. Almost fragile, a single moving point in an ocean that knows no boundaries, and yet it is strong enough, it holds, it carries you all forward, and you descend again, returning to the deck, to the familiar space, to the shared life that continues without interruption, and when your watch ends, another begins, the seamless exchange of duty that keeps the ship alive, and you eat when you can, the same simple rations, the same rough food, but it no longer feels like deprivation, it feels like sustenance, like something that supports the life you have chosen, and you rest when you can, your sleep deep and immediate, shaped by exhaustion and the steady motion of the sea, and in those quiet hours below deck, surrounded by the presence of others, you feel that sense of belonging again, not spoken, not declared, but understood, and the days continue to pass in this way, one flowing into the next, the pattern repeating and yet never truly identical, and you begin to see that this life is not defined by singular moments of action or excitement, but by the continuity itself, by the way everything connects, everything builds, everything moves forward without pause, and even the boredom, the long stretches of empty horizon, become part of that understanding, not something to resist, but something to accept, something that shapes the experience just as much as the moments of intensity. And you learn to live within it, to find a kind of quiet stability in the repetition, in the rhythm that underlies everything, and as another evening settles over the ship, the light fading slowly into darkness, the stars beginning to appear one by one, you stand once more at the edge of the deck, looking out across the water, and you realize that you are no longer waiting for something to happen, you are no longer measuring this life by what might come next, because what comes next is always the same in its essence, always part of the same flow, and you are already within it. Already moving forward, carried by the ship, by the sea, by the choices you have made, and you remain there for a moment longer, breathing in the salt air, listening to the quiet sounds of the vessel, and then you turn back, stepping once again into the continuous motion of your life, without hesitation, without doubt. And the longer you remain within this rhythm, the more it begins to shape not just your actions, but your thoughts, your sense of time, even your understanding of what a life is meant to be, and you notice that the sharp contrast you once felt between hardship and reward, between danger and calm, begins to soften, not because those things disappear, but because they are no longer separate in your mind. They are part of the same continuous current, rising and falling, but always connected. Always flowing forward, and you begin to accept them not as interruptions, but as expressions of the same existence, and this understanding settles into you quietly, without any single moment of realization, simply growing with each passing day, with each watch stood, with each task completed, with each horizon crossed. And so the ship continues, and you with it, moving through stretches of time that feel almost suspended, where the sea lies calm and unbroken, the wind steady, the sails full, and nothing seems to change except the slow passage of light across the sky, and in these moments the world feels vast beyond measure, and you feel both small within it and yet completely anchored to your place in it, and the routine carries you, the watch, the work, the brief rest, the simple meals, the quiet conversations, the shared presence of the men around you, and it becomes clear that this is the true substance of your life now, not the rare moments of action, but the steady, unbroken continuity of everything in between. There are days when the wind drops and the sea turns to glass, when the sails hang limp and the ship drifts slowly, almost reluctantly. Activity, but as a presence of its own, something that stretches time, that makes each hour feel longer than the last, and you feel it in your body, in the way your thoughts begin to wander, in the way the horizon seems to hold you in place rather than lead you forward, and yet even this becomes part of the rhythm, something to endure, something to move through rather than escape, and the crew finds its own ways to fill the space. Small conversations, shared across the water, and in these moments the stillness becomes something different, something heavier, pressing in on you with a kind of quiet intensity, and the boredom you once heard spoken of reveals itself fully, not as a simple lack of Tories, the occasional burst of laughter that breaks the stillness for a moment before fading again into the quiet. And then, just as naturally, the wind returns, filling the sails with a sudden, living force, and the ship responds immediately, leaning into its motion, cutting forward once more, and with it comes a shift in energy, subtle but unmistakable, as the crew adjusts, returning to the familiar pace, the familiar tasks, the sense of movement restored, and you feel that change as clearly as anything. The transition from stillness to motion, from waiting to doing, and it reminds you again that nothing here remains fixed for long, that everything moves, everything changes, but always within the same continuous flow. As the weeks pass, you begin to notice the signs of land long before it appears, small details that once meant nothing to you now carrying clear meaning, the presence of certain birds, the faint change in the color of the water, the distant shape of clouds that gather over unseen shores, and these signs bring with them a quiet anticipation, not the wild excitement you once imagined, but a steady awareness that another phase of this life is approaching, that the long stretch of sea will soon give way to something else, something different. At the ship itself, and you see the signs of what has just been faced, the wet ropes, the strained wood, the exhaustion in every movement, and yet everything still holds, everything continues. The work does not stop, of course, it never truly does, and once the storm has passed, there is much to be done, repairs to be made, sails to be checked, lines to be reset, and you take part in it all, your body tired but still moving, still responding, because this is what this life demands, this constant attention, this unbroken engagement, and you no longer question it, you no longer resist it, you simply accept it as part of the same continuous rhythm that defines everything here. And in the quieter moments that follow, when the sky clears and the sea settles once more, you find yourself reflecting not in words, but in a deeper sense of awareness, a recognition of how far you have come, not in distance, but in understanding, in the way you have adapted, in the way this life has shaped you, and you realize that the person you once were, the one who stood on that merchant deck, exhausted and uncertain, feels distant now, not forgotten, but transformed, absorbed into who you have become. The days continue, blending into nights, the stars rising and falling, the moon tracing its path across the sky, and you begin to read these patterns as easily as you read the ropes and sails, understanding the subtle shifts that guide the ship, that guide your course, and there is a quiet comfort in that, in knowing that even in this vast, open world, there are signs, there are rhythms, there are ways to navigate not just the sea, but the life you are living upon it. And so you continue, always moving forward, always within the same unbroken flow, the ship carrying you across distances both seen and unseen, through moments of calm and moments of intensity, through the endless repetition that is never truly repetition, because each moment, each experience, adds something. Nor does it feel like a return, it simply feels like continuation, like stepping back into a flow that never truly stopped, and as the sails are raised and the ship moves once more into the open sea, you stand there, steady and present, fully a part of it, fully within it, carried forward once again into the endless, unbroken rhythm of life upon the water. As the shoreline slowly fades behind you once again, dissolving into a thin line and then into nothing at all, you feel no sense of loss, no pull backward, because you understand now that nothing is truly left behind, it simply becomes part of what has already been lived, part of the same continuous thread that stretches behind you just as surely as it stretches ahead, and the sea opens once more, vast and indifferent, yet familiar in a way that feels almost grounding, and the ship settles into its course as if it, too, recognizes the return, the resumption of its true purpose. The sails fill, the ropes tighten, the timbers groan softly, and the rhythm begins again without any need for announcement, and you move with it as naturally as you breathe, stepping into your duties, your place, your role within this floating world that now feels as real and as defined as any land you have ever known, and the crew moves as one, not in perfect uniformity, but in shared understanding, each man aware of his part in maintaining the delicate balance that keeps everything functioning, and there is a quiet strength in that, a kind of order that does not rely on force, but on agreement, on experience, on the simple fact that everyone here knows what is at stake. Days pass, and the sea shows its many faces, sometimes calm and almost motionless, reflecting the sky like a mirror, other times restless, shifting, the wind rising and falling in ways that demand constant attention, constant adjustment, and you respond without hesitation, your hands working the ropes, your eyes reading the sails, your body moving in time with the ship. And there is a kind of quiet satisfaction in that, in knowing that your actions matter, that the smallest adjustment can make a difference, that you are not simply enduring this life, but actively shaping your place within it. There are moments when the sky darkens without warning, when clouds gather and the wind shifts sharply, carrying with it the promise of a storm, and the mood aboard the ship changes instantly, not to panic, but to focus, to readiness, and you feel that shift as clearly as anything, the tightening of attention, the quickening of movement, and the crew works together with practiced efficiency, securing what must be secured, adjusting the sails, preparing the ship to face whatever is coming, and when the storm arrives, it does so with a force that reminds you just how small this vessel truly is, just how fragile everything here can be. The rain lashes down, the wind howls through the rigging, the waves rise and fall in powerful, unpredictable surges, and the ship climbs and drops with a motion that feels almost alive, and you hold fast, your hands gripping the ropes, your body braced against the shifting deck, and in these moments there is no room for anything else, no room for thought beyond the immediate, beyond the next movement, the next adjustment, the next command, and the captain's voice cuts through the noise, steady and clear, guiding the ship through the chaos, and the crew responds without hesitation, each man doing what must be done, not for glory, not for reward, but simply because it is necessary. And then, as suddenly as it came, the storm begins to pass, the wind easing, the rain softening, the waves settling back into a more familiar rhythm, and the tension that filled the ship slowly releases, not in celebration, but in quiet acknowledgement, in the shared understanding that you have endured, that you have continued, that the flow has not been broken, only intensified for a time. And you look around at the men beside you,